In 2016, Director General of Inter-Services Public Relations, one of the comments he made, military business is essential because in case the Pakistani state ever collapses, the military ought to have a fallback arrangement. Now, what National Logistics Cell has done, that it's completely deadened another public sector organization, which is Pakistan Railways. End of Pervez Musharraf era also created problems for army's military's image. And in order to kind of correct it, to do image building, they, pretended to have fair elections in 2008, bring in a civilian government, try not to intervene in politics, control of the state to control of governance. 2018, the Imran Khan government takes another step towards hybridity, which is bringing Army Chief into the topmost Economic Advisory Council. The important factor with military business in Pakistan is that it's justified in the name of providing welfare. But as we know it, that welfare is just an excuse to build political power, political significance, and military's autonomy. Now, one of the interesting arguments that I heard in 2016, the Director General of Inter-Services Public Relations, one of the comments he made privately was that military business is essential because in case the Pakistani state ever collapses, the military ought to have a fallback arrangement, an economic fallback arrangement. This is how it's visualized, or that's how it's explained to itself, to the organization. However, I find this argument problematic on the basis that many of these businesses are not even cost effective. When I looked at, for example, Army Welfare Trust and its cement production, I found that it was inefficiently run. And what makes these businesses efficient actually is that they can capitalize on state power and state resources. National Logistics Cell is one of the largest cargo transport company. It was set up in the early 1980s. There was a crisis at Karachi seaport, and there was a problem of supply of wheat throughout the country, and in an emergency they set up this small kind of operation to solve the wheat supply crisis. But then they set up a company. Now, what National Logistics Cell has done, that it's completely deadened another public sector organization, which is Pakistan Railways. It's taken away business from Pakistan Railway. That's one. But the other is that it has also retarded the growth of private sector in area of cargo transport. So many of large companies, transport companies, had to then quit and leave Pakistan for heavy construction, for example, dams, roads, etc. Now they draw on manipulating government contracts, and because there is a political engagement, and this is what I call this economic area is very political, has a political undertone. Military gets business opportunities because it is politically powerful, and because it gets it and builds an economic strength, it then adds to military's political capital even further, and that is what has been happening over decades. But its effectiveness has never been truly challenged because there is little accountability. During 2000s, when it was Pervez Musharraf, and Pervez Musharraf brought in his guided or guarded democracy and held elections and brought in a government, a civilian government, that parliament, even that parliament, called the chairman of Fauji Foundation, Fauji Fertilizer, General Muhammad Amjad, who was also formerly, he had served as chairman of the National Accountability Bureau, which is the primary anti-corruption agency of the country. And he was called to explain Fauji Fertilizer operations, and he refused to, present himself before the parliament, saying, I'm a private entity and therefore I don't need to come and answer be accountable to the parliament. So there is resistance. And the argument that the explanation, let me repeat myself, they say is that this is to keep, to ensure military survival during an economic crisis. But the fact of the matter is that it's really about establishing military's autonomy. It gives them a sense of control, a sense of power, and a sense that they cannot be controlled in any form, even financially, by politicians, by the parliament. So it's really about autonomy. And also, one factor which we can't rule out is greed of individual officers, especially in the higher echelons. They use it as an opportunity to extend their jobs. What I also feel is that while we talk about military's autonomy, and while we talk about its inefficiency of these businesses, one of the problems that it definitely tends to create is it eats into military's professionalism. So this is a few years ago. Authors like Adnan Nasimullah, Paul Staniland, and there's another one, a third author, I'm forgetting his name. They had written a paper arguing that this is a means of enhancing military's professionalism. The system of reward and punishment, which then allows the military to control. These jobs are created. There is actually no systematic study of how professionalism has actually eroded. Because an officer, when he's expecting, although the argument is that it's based on merit, but there is no strict formula. A person will get a job because every year there are thousands that retire from the army and the Air Force and the Navy. And how do you kind of accommodate them in terms of providing post-retirement jobs? And that also depends on your communication, your linkage with the echelons. And so in many cases, jobs are provided, the better jobs are provided to those who have better linkages. And those better linkages depend on relationship with the higher officers. And that's where professionalism gets eroded. Let me now come to 2017, the second edition. The first edition was, it brought the book a lot of attention, popularity. Initially, it was thought that this was a book against Pervez Musharraf. But then later on, the military understood that it was challenging the perks and privileges, and therefore they got very upset, very angry. There were threats of being tried for treason. I had to flee the country for a short while, then return. But 2017, I did a second edition in which I added 2 chapters. One was looking at the political changes and milbiz in Pakistan from 2007 till 2016. The other chapter was looking at a formidable area where the military expanded, and that is media. Now, what I realized politically, the shift that had happened from 2007 to 2017 and onwards, is that the military earlier on was an arbiter military. It would come occasionally, after every 10 years of civilian control or civilian rule, it would come directly, martial law, rule. Then, once it's thought that being engaged in running of the state was bringing them, or military presidential rule wasn't beneficial for their image, they would, go back, proverbially, to the barracks. But that formula was then essentially changed after 2007. In 2007, 2008. 2007, 28th October, He resigned as the army chief and passed on the baton to General Kiani, General Ishfaq Parvez Kiani as next army chief. But in 2008, he also resigned as president of Pakistan. So it was end of Parvez Musharraf era. But end of Parvez Musharraf era also created problems for military's image. And in order to kind of correct it, that image, or to do image building, they pretended to have fair elections in 2008, bring in a civilian government, try not to intervene in politics. The army chief, General Kiani, ordered his officers that they would not meet any politicians. He withdrew. Military officers who were doing, performing duties, were doing jobs, civilian jobs in different government departments. They were withdrawn, brought back to the military. But essentially, an unwritten policy shift that happened was that military changed from control of the state to control of governance. But that essentially also meant that they would never go away, never withdraw from power. And this is where I argue that hybridity of politics started, because that meant that essentially military would constantly hobnob with everyday governance of the state. This increased further in 2013 when the decision-making formula was changed by the Nawaz Sharif government in 2013. Basically, they created the National Security Committee, which was replicating the National Security Council, where military generals would become partners with, they became partners with civilian decision makers, and they would decide on, in partnership, on all strategic matters. 2018, you have Imran Khan government, and Imran Khan government takes another step towards hybridity, which is bringing the army chief into the topmost economic advisory council. Fast forward, change in government. So 2022, the PDM government, after removing Imran Khan, so after change of government, removal of Imran Khan in 2022, the new government that comes in, the caretaker government, then brings in a new army chief, current Army Chief Asim Munir, who then sets up the Special Investment Facilitation Council, which is really involved in strategic economic decision making. So from education policy, allocation of resources for education, to agriculture, to industry, all these matters are dealt with by the Special Investment Facilitation Council. So there has been what I call, after 2007 to date, a deepening of military's strategic involvement in governance.